Stop scrolling. What if I told you that the reason you clicked this video was not an accident? What if heaven has been trying to get your attention for days, maybe even weeks? And this message is the final warning before a miracle enters your life? Listen carefully, because what you are about to hear is not for everyone. Many people will ignore this message. Many people will leave before the end. But if you are still here, if something inside your spirit pushed you to click this video, then there is a reason, a divine reason. At this very moment, there are battles happening around you that your physical eyes cannot see. Doors are opening, chains are breaking, and forces that tried to delay your blessing are beginning to lose their grip. But there is one thing you must understand. The closer a miracle gets, the louder the distractions become. The closer your breakthrough gets, the stronger the attacks feel. And that is why this warning is so important. Because many chosen ones make a mistake right before their blessing arrives. They become impatient. They become discouraged. They start doubting what God has already prepared. And without realizing it, they begin walking away from the very thing they prayed for. Do not let that happen to you. Because according to this message, you are standing at a critical moment. A moment that can determine whether you step into your next season with confidence or allow fear to steal your peace. Archangel Michael says, pay attention, not tomorrow, not next week. Now, because heaven is sending signs, heaven is sending confirmations. And heaven is sending this warning before the miracle. If you feel led to receive this message, type, I am ready, and stay with me until the end. Because what Archangel Michael reveals next may explain everything you have been experiencing lately. Section 1. Why everything has felt different lately. Have you noticed that something feels different? You cannot fully explain it, but deep inside, you know something is changing. Maybe your emotions have been stronger than usual. Maybe certain people have suddenly disappeared from your life. Maybe old habits no longer satisfy you. Maybe you feel restless, as if your spirit knows something your mind has not yet understood. This is often what happens before a major shift. Before a new chapter begins, the old chapter starts closing. And sometimes that process feels uncomfortable, because God cannot take you where you are going while keeping everything from where you have been. That is why some relationships end. That is why some opportunities disappear. That is why some doors close unexpectedly. It is not always punishment. Sometimes it is preparation. Archangel Michael says that many people mistake preparation for rejection. They think God has abandoned them when He is actually positioning them. They think heaven has forgotten them when heaven is arranging things behind the scenes. The delay is not the denial. The waiting is not the end. And the silence does not mean God is absent. In fact, some of God's greatest works happen in seasons where nothing seems to be happening. Because while you are waiting, heaven is working. While you are wondering, heaven is arranging. While you are worrying, heaven is preparing. And that is why you must not lose hope now, because you may be much closer than you think. Section 2. The Final Warning Archangel. Michael says, do not sabotage your miracle with fear. This warning is simple but powerful. Fear has stopped more blessings than failure ever could. Fear convinces people to quit too soon. Fear convinces people to doubt what God promised. Fear convinces people that nothing will ever change. But fear is a liar. Think about everything God has already brought you through. The battles, the heartbreaks, the disappointments, the sleepless nights. You survived all of them. Not because you were strong enough, but because God was faithful enough. And if He carried you through those seasons, why would He abandon you now? He wouldn't. That is why this warning matters. Because the enemy often attacks hardest when he knows his time is running out. He creates confusion. He creates frustration. He creates distractions. Anything to stop you from reaching what God has prepared. But today, you must make a decision. You will not be controlled by fear. You will not be controlled by doubt. And you will not allow temporary circumstances to make permanent decisions. Because your miracle is big, Archangel. Michael says, do not sabotage your miracle with fear. This warning is simple but powerful. Fear has stopped more blessings than failure ever could. Fear convinces people to quit too soon. Fear convinces people to doubt what God promised. Fear convinces people that nothing will ever change. But fear is a liar. Think about everything God has already brought you through: the battles, the heartbreaks, the disappointments, the sleepless nights. You survived all of them, not because you were strong enough, but because God was faithful enough. And if He carried you through those seasons, why would He abandon you now? He wouldn't. That is why this warning matters. Because the enemy often attacks hardest when he knows his time is running out. He creates confusion. He creates frustration. He creates distractions. Anything to stop you from reaching what God has prepared. But today, you must make a decision. You will not be controlled by fear. You will not be controlled by doubt. And you will not allow temporary circumstances to make permanent decisions, because your miracle is bigger than your current situation. Section 3. The sign that your miracle is near. Many people ask, how do I know if my miracle is close? Archangel Michael says there are signs. One sign is increased resistance. When you suddenly face obstacles from every direction, it may not mean you are moving the wrong way. Sometimes it means you are moving the right way. Another sign is spiritual awakening. You begin seeking God more. You become sensitive to His voice. You feel drawn toward prayer. You feel drawn toward truth. A third sign is separation. People who once had access to your life begin leaving, not because you failed, but because they cannot go where God is taking you. And perhaps the greatest sign of all is this: you feel a deep inner knowing, a sense that something significant is approaching. You cannot explain it, but you know. Your spirit knows. And that feeling is not random, because heaven often whispers before it moves. Section 4. What you must do now. Do not chase signs. Chase God. Do not obsess over timing. Trust God's timing. Do not allow anxiety to replace faith. Instead, prepare your heart. Prepare your mind. Prepare your spirit. Live as someone who expects God's goodness. Speak as someone who believes His promises. Walk as someone who knows heaven is working, because expectation creates alignment, and alignment creates readiness. The miracle is God's responsibility. The preparation is yours. Powerful ending. Archangel Michael says, this is your final warning before the miracle. Do not give up now. Do not turn back now. Do not surrender to fear now. The season you prayed for is closer than you realize. The answers are forming. The doors are opening. The chains are breaking. And what seemed impossible is about to become possible. If this message spoke to your spirit type, my miracle is coming, and remember, the darkest hour often comes right before the sunrise. Stay faithful, stay focused, stay ready, because your story is not ending here. It may just be beginning. Amen. And as you continue listening, there is something Archangel Michael wants you to understand that many people never realize until it is too late. The miracle itself is not the greatest blessing. The person you become while waiting for the miracle is the greater blessing. Think about that for a moment. If God had answered every prayer the moment you prayed it, would you have learned patience? Would you have learned faith? Would you have learned how to trust when there was no visible evidence? Probably not. Yet those very qualities are what prepare you for the next chapter of your life. Because heaven is not interested only in changing your circumstances. Heaven is interested in transforming you. And transformation rarely happens in comfort. It happens in seasons where you must walk by faith and not by sight. That is why some of you have felt stretched lately. You have felt pressure. You have felt uncertainty. You have felt moments where nothing seemed to make sense. But Archangel Michael says the pressure is not meant to destroy you. The pressure is revealing the strength God has already placed within you. A diamond is formed under pressure. Gold is refined through fire. And chosen ones are strengthened through trials. The very thing that feels like it is breaking you may actually be building you. You may not see it today. You may not understand it this week. But one day you will look back and realize that every challenge had a purpose. Every delay had a lesson. Every disappointment redirected you toward something greater. And that realization will fill your heart with gratitude. Because what looked like rejection was protection. What looked like loss was preparation. And what looked like an ending was actually a beginning. Archangel Michael says there are people listening right now who have been carrying burdens that were never meant to stay on their shoulders. You have been worrying about situations you cannot control. You have been replaying conversations in your mind. You have been trying to figure out how everything will work out. But heaven is asking you to release that burden. Because some battles are won through surrender. Not surrender to fear, not surrender to defeat, but surrender to God. There is a difference. When you surrender to God, you stop trying to control every outcome. You stop exhausting yourself with endless worry. You stop carrying responsibilities that belong to heaven. And in that surrender, peace begins to return. Not because every problem disappears immediately, but because you know you are no longer facing those problems alone. Archangel Michael says many miracles are delayed because people spend so much time looking at the mountain that they forget to look at the one who created the mountain. Your focus matters. What you constantly think about grows stronger in your life. If you focus only on problems, fear grows. If you focus on God's promises, faith grows. That is why you must guard your attention, guard your thoughts, guard your heart, because not every voice deserves access to your spirit. Some voices speak life, others speak doubt. Some voices encourage growth, others encourage fear. And in this season, you must be careful about which voices you choose to follow. The world will tell you to panic. The world will tell you to give up. The world will tell you that your situation is impossible. But heaven says something different. Heaven says that nothing is impossible with God. Heaven says that doors can open suddenly. Heaven says that circumstances can change unexpectedly. Heaven says that miracles still happen. And if miracles still happen, then why not for you? Why should you believe that everyone else can experience God's favor except you? Why should you believe that everyone else can receive breakthrough except you? Those thoughts do not come from heaven. They come from fear. And fear always tries to convince you that your story will end differently than God's promises. But Archangel Michael says your story is still being written. The chapter you are in right now is not the final chapter. There are pages ahead that you have not yet seen. There are blessings ahead that you have not yet imagined. There are opportunities ahead that you have not yet discovered. And there are miracles ahead that will make sense of everything you have endured. One day you will understand why certain doors closed. One day you will understand why certain people left. One day you will understand why certain plans failed. Because hindsight often reveals what faith had to trust. Archangel Michael says many chosen ones are standing at the edge of a transition. You can feel it. You sense it. You know that life cannot remain the same. And you are right. Change is coming. But before change arrives, preparation must happen. A farmer does not harvest before planting. A builder does not complete a house before laying a foundation. And heaven does not release certain blessings before preparing the person who will receive them. Preparation is not punishment. Preparation is evidence that something valuable is coming. If you were not important to your assignment, the enemy would not fight you so hard. If your future carried no significance, opposition would not be so determined to distract you. The attacks themselves are evidence, not evidence that you are failing, evidence that you are moving forward, evidence that your breakthrough matters, evidence that your purpose carries weight. Archangel Michael says there are some people listening who almost gave up recently. You smiled in public, but privately, you were exhausted. You encouraged others, but inside, you needed encouragement yourself. You kept moving forward. But there were moments when you wondered how much longer you could continue, and heaven saw every one of those moments, every tear, every prayer, every silent cry, every act of faith. Nothing escaped God's attention. Nothing was ignored. Nothing was forgotten. The prayers you thought went unheard were heard. The tears you thought went unnoticed were noticed. The faith you thought was invisible was seen. And heaven has been responding even when you could not see the response. That is why Archangel Michael says you must not measure God's activity by what you can currently see. Some of the most important work happens beneath the surface. A seed grows underground before anyone sees evidence above ground. Yet growth is still happening, and the same is true in your life. Growth is happening. Progress is happening. Preparation is happening, even when visible evidence appears limited. Do not mistake hidden progress for lack of progress. Do not mistake divine timing for denial. Do not mistake temporary silence for abandonment, because heaven is closer than you think. And sometimes what feels like a delay is actually a strategic setup. A setup for something bigger. A setup for something better. A setup for something beyond what you originally requested. Archangel Michael says many people pray for small blessings while God is preparing larger ones. Many people ask for relief while God is preparing transformation. Many people ask for survival while God is preparing purpose. And because God's vision is greater than ours, His timing often differs from ours. But His timing is never late. Never. Not once. Not ever. The sun rises exactly when it is supposed to. The seasons change exactly when they are supposed to. And God's promises unfold exactly when they are supposed to. Trust the process. Trust the journey. Trust the one guiding both. Because your miracle is not lost. Your breakthrough is not canceled. Your purpose is not forgotten. Your future is not broken, and your story is not over. In fact, Archangel Michael says this may be the very season where everything begins to shift. The season where confusion gives way to clarity. The season where fear gives way to confidence. The season where struggle gives way to strength. The season where waiting gives way to fulfillment. But before that happens, you must make a decision. A decision to remain faithful. A decision to remain hopeful. A decision to remain focused. Not because circumstances are perfect, but because God remains faithful, and faithfulness is stronger than fear. Hope is stronger than despair. Truth is stronger than lies. Light is stronger than darkness, and God is greater than every challenge standing before you. So today, Archangel Michael's message is clear. Do not quit. Do not retreat. Do not surrender your peace. Do not surrender your faith. Do not surrender your expectation, because heaven is still moving. Heaven is still working. Heaven is still preparing. And what is coming next may be greater than anything you have imagined. Stay alert. Stay prayerful. Stay grateful. Stay ready. Because the miracle you have been waiting for may arrive in a way you never expected. And when it does, you will realize that every moment of waiting had meaning. Every challenge had purpose. Every delay carried wisdom. And every step of the journey was leading you exactly where God intended you to be. Continue into the next section with a new revelation, testimony-style story, and deeper prophetic message to extend toward a full long-form script. And as those words settle into your spirit, Archangel Michael says there is another truth you must hear today. The miracle is closer than it appears, but the enemy wants you to believe the exact opposite. Why? Because discouragement is one of the most powerful weapons used against chosen people. Discouragement does not always arrive through dramatic events. Sometimes it arrives quietly. It whispers. It tells you that nothing is changing. It tells you that your prayers are ineffective. It tells you that your efforts are pointless. It tells you that God has forgotten about you. And if those whispers are repeated long enough, they begin to sound like truth. But Archangel Michael says they are not truth. They are distractions. The truth is that God has not forgotten you. The truth is that heaven still sees you. The truth is that your prayers still matter. The truth is that your breakthrough still exists. And the truth is that what God promised cannot be canceled by temporary circumstances. Remember that. Temporary circumstances cannot cancel eternal promises. Storms come and go. Seasons change. People enter and leave. Opportunities appear and disappear. But God's faithfulness remains. And because His faithfulness remains, your hope should remain as well. There are people listening right now who have spent months asking one question. When will things finally change? Archangel Michael says that question is understandable. But there is a better question. Who am I becoming while I wait? Because your future is not built only by what happens to you. It is built by who you become during the process. Anyone can remain faithful when everything is easy. Anyone can remain hopeful when every prayer is answered immediately. But true faith reveals itself when you continue trusting despite uncertainty. That kind of faith moves heaven. That kind of faith transforms lives. That kind of faith prepares you for extraordinary assignments. And perhaps that is exactly why your journey has been different. Perhaps God has allowed certain challenges because your calling requires a deeper level of strength, a deeper level of wisdom, a deeper level of trust. Archangel Michael says there are gifts inside you that have not yet been fully activated. There are abilities. There is wisdom. There is purpose. There is potential. But potential often remains hidden until pressure reveals it. That is why some of the strongest people emerge from the hardest seasons, because difficulties reveal capabilities that comfort never could. Think about your own life. You have already survived situations that once seemed impossible. There were moments when you thought you would never recover, moments when you thought the pain would never end, moments when you thought the future had disappeared. Yet here you are, still standing, still moving forward, still listening, still believing. That alone is evidence of God's hand upon your life. Archangel Michael says many people underestimate how far they have already come. They focus so much on what has not happened yet that they forget what God has already done. Take a moment and remember. Remember the prayers that were answered. Remember the doors that opened. Remember the protection you received. Remember the blessings that arrived unexpectedly. Remember the strength that carried you through previous storms. The same God who helped you then is helping you now. The same God who protected you then is protecting you now. The same God who provided then is providing now. His character has not changed. His power has not changed. His promises have not changed. And because he has not changed, your confidence should not disappear. Archangel Michael says confidence is not arrogance. Confidence is trust. Confidence is believing that God is working even when evidence is incomplete. Confidence is continuing to move forward despite uncertainty. Confidence is choosing faith over fear. And that choice matters. Because every day you face a decision. Will you believe the problem, or will you believe God's promise? Will you focus on what is wrong, or will you focus on what is possible? Will you surrender to discouragement, or will you rise in faith? The answer to those questions shapes your journey, not because positive thinking creates miracles, but because faith positions your heart to receive what God is already preparing. Archangel Michael says heaven is preparing connections. Heaven is preparing opportunities. Heaven is preparing solutions. Heaven is preparing restoration. Heaven is preparing breakthroughs. Even now, even while you listen, even while you wonder, even while you wait. Activity is taking place beyond what your eyes can see. And one day the invisible preparation will become visible reality. When that day arrives, many things will suddenly make sense. You will understand why certain relationships ended. You will understand why certain opportunities disappeared. You will understand why certain delays occurred. And instead of frustration, you will feel gratitude, because you will realize that God's plan was protecting you all along. Archangel Michael says one of the greatest mistakes people make is assuming that every closed door is a loss. Not every closed door is a loss. Some closed doors are divine protection. Some closed doors prevent future pain. Some closed doors redirect you toward greater opportunities. Some closed doors save you from paths that would have distracted you from your purpose. That is why wisdom is essential. Not every opportunity is your opportunity. Not every invitation is your invitation. Not every path is your path. And in this season, discernment will be one of your greatest gifts. Pay attention. Notice what brings peace. Notice what creates confusion. Notice where God is directing your heart. Because heaven often guides through wisdom long before circumstances change. Archangel Michael says there is another warning that must be shared. Do not allow bitterness to take root in your heart. Bitterness is dangerous because it disguises itself as justified pain. Someone hurt you. Someone disappointed you. Someone betrayed your trust. And the wound feels real. because it is real, but bitterness extends the damage. The event may have happened once. Bitterness forces you to relive it repeatedly. And heaven does not want that for you. Forgiveness does not mean pretending nothing happened. Forgiveness does not mean approving harmful behavior. Forgiveness means releasing the burden so that your future is not controlled by your past. Archangel Michael says some miracles require open hands. If your hands are full of yesterday's pain, it becomes difficult to receive tomorrow's blessing. Release what God is asking you to release. Trust what God is asking you to trust. And follow where God is asking you to go. Because the next chapter cannot fully begin while you remain trapped in the previous one. There is more ahead, more purpose, more growth, more peace, more clarity, more joy, more opportunity, more blessing, and yes, more miracles. But those miracles often arrive disguised as ordinary moments. A conversation, a phone call, an unexpected opportunity, a new relationship, a sudden idea, a chance encounter. One moment can change everything. One decision can redirect a future. One breakthrough can alter an entire season. Never underestimate what God can do through a single moment. Archangel Michael says your future is not determined by your worst day. It is not determined by your biggest mistake. It is not determined by your greatest failure. Your future is shaped by God's purpose and your willingness to continue moving forward. So keep moving forward, even if the steps feel small, even if progress feels slow, even if answers seem delayed. Keep moving forward, because every faithful step matters, every prayer matters, every act of obedience matters, every moment of trust matters. Nothing is wasted, nothing is forgotten, nothing is meaningless. God sees it all, and according to Archangel Michael, heaven is preparing a season that will remind you why you never should have given up. A season that will remind you why faith matters. A season that will remind you why perseverance matters. A season that will remind you that God's timing is worth trusting. So if you have been tired, hold on. If you have been discouraged, hold on. If you have been questioning, hold on. If you have been waiting, hold on. Because this is not the end of your story. This is preparation for the next chapter. And that chapter may be closer than you think.